Thank you very much, everyone. I am from Japan's northernmost island of Hokkaido, and I am a Buddhist temple wife, married to a priest of the Jodo Shin Hongan-ji Pure Land sect, and I am also the chairperson of the First Star Team Buddhist Recitation School, which I would like to share my experiences of. I also want to share my experiences with those who were affected by the devastation of the great Northeast Japan earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster. Before beginning, I wanted to share these overall message for my talk. If there is just a small sparkle or radiance, the meaning of life can be shared, and we can become as one light. I also wanted to share our group's logo that looks like this. So the title of my talk today is The Potential of Buddhism for Public Oration, an Infinite Series. Some people may see no relation between Buddhism and public oration, but I think there are some very interesting things to learn. In my talk, I will speak about three key issues as follows. 1, how I got involved in this work. 2, how these performances are creative. And 3, their potential. In getting involved in this work, I felt first that I wanted to do something that touched people's hearts. The Chinese character at the top of the screen is the Japanese word kando, which means literally the movement of emotion or feeling. I became the wife of a priest not out of any previous direct interest in Buddhism, but I was surprised to find many such kando-like stories in Buddhism, and I felt I could become the person to communicate them to a wider audience, especially our parishioners, who experience all sorts of suffering and could benefit from the wisdom contained in these stories. The second character on your screen is Hondo, which means the main Buddha hall of the temple, that is basically only used for religious services now, but I thought could also be used for the narration of these stories. This seemed like a better maximization of this large open space. In pre-modern Japan, the Buddha hall was used for all sorts of activities, like school lessons for local children, and I wanted to help revive that role. The bottom character on your screen means an era for the movement of audiovisual education, which is the way we want to portray our stories. Usually the performances are about 90 minutes long, and I have wanted to connect the stories with audiovisual elements. We also wanted to change the technical Buddhist language in the stories into more colloquial expressions so that children and average people could understand. So there are a number of things I have learned in this process. First is that Buddhism should be the root foundation. From doing this work in the Buddha hall of our temple, I started to get more and more requests and to expand to other areas in our neighborhood, like a local school. At first, I wondered if it was okay to provide what could be considered a religious sermon in the school, but then I realized the message in the story could be a big help to people. So Buddhism just provides a trigger for people to come to a new realization. The second point is that while some things don't change over time, some things do indeed change. The basic teachings of Buddhism are universal, and thus don't change over time. But the method that we communicate them does change, and this is a delicate balance that we try to maintain in our work. Thirdly, imagination is very important. Our recitation or oration stimulate the imagination of the audience through an identification with the characters in the story. These characters are fascinating, and they draw in the audience in a pleasing way. And this is the fourth point, that it's important to use simpler, colloquial language, which makes the subject matter and story alluring, because Buddhism is really quite fascinating. Concerning the way these performances are created, we first begin with the theme, which we feel should be communicated using simple words. For example, the title, The Seed of Happiness. When doing this theme in a junior high school, the teacher will tell the students about it, and immediately their imagination will be stimulated and think, where can I find that seed? I have heard these things from the students themselves after the performance. In this way, theme and title are very important. Next is the main story, and third is the Dharma talk, or message. While the performance may be 60 to 90 minutes, we limit the Dharma talk to just 5 or 10 minutes. We also add piano accompaniment to aid the whole performance. I can feel the students increasingly resonate during the performance, and we develop a shared feeling, which leads to the last part, which is singing together, a song that reflects what we have learned. If it is a sad story, we will still try not to end on a negative note, and instead instill a feeling of hope. Unfortunately, I myself am rather tone deaf, so it's really hard for me to participate in this last part. Now I would like to speak about dealing with disaster. On March 11th, 2011, was the day of the great Northeast Japan triple disaster, and from this moment we decided to create a play called The Day of Hope. This came from the many visits we made to the area to support local Jodo Shin temples. One temple was hit by a tsunami 2 meters high, in which 70 people were lost and died. So many of the temple graves were destroyed, and even ships had been left washed up on top of them. There was also a lot of debris from the wave left behind in the Buddha hall of the temple. After spending 1 year supporting the rebuilding of the community, we became closer with the local people. In this period, they said to me that day by day we see less footage in the media on the disaster, and people are becoming less interested in the problems here. And this is the most painful part, people just forgetting about it. This is the paragraph that I wrote in our brochure advertising our work. It goes, "1 year has passed since that fateful day. We see a decreasing amount of coverage about the day on TV. Of course, TV coverage is not everything. So why don't we come together to remember about what was important and what we should not forget and record it for memory?" As I was in Hokkaido, away from the disaster, we raised money and sent emergency supplies, but I realized that there was more that we could do, such as finding a way to keep this memory of great sadness and suffering to pass down to the next generation. So I created this play called The Light of Hope, which expressed this sentiment. In a situation where people do not want to remember sadness, suffering, pain, bitterness, fear, and hunger beyond all imagination, I feel I want to tell about it for the people who experienced it and are still keenly aware of it. So what did we learn from this disaster, and are we integrating this into our daily lives? We can eat, we can drink, we can go to work and go to school, we can laugh, we can take our lives for granted, but in fact this ordinary life is such a precious life. Do we realize that? I think that this is our homework. People's economic way of living and the state of their minds are just two of the many unresolved issues in these disaster areas. So how can Japan change to meet this situation? Once we find some solutions from different viewpoints, we need to pass these on to the next generation. I want to now speak about the potential of Buddhism in this situation. First, the mindset or viewpoint about the way to live changes, the way life changes. Buddhism can act as a preventative medicine. It may not be able to cure the problem totally, but what I have read in the feedback from our performances is that people get a new perspective, and from that new perspective they discover new possibilities and solutions, and in the end they gain a greater power to continue to live. Finally, I want to consider what is the potential of Buddhism in terms of public oration or storytelling. In this flow, one begins at the top with something that moves the mind or heart, and thus is emotional, and then you emphasize, and finally, you communicate this feeling. The power of Buddhism is that this message can be communicated naturally. In some local junior high schools in the disaster regions, some of the students died in the tsunami, or ended up committing suicide in the year afterwards. In this way, there was still an aura of suffering at the schools which had not healed, and the teachers asked us to do a performance at the end of the school year. This is when I realized the universal power of Buddhism. In this slide, I want to share some feedback I received, and also share this poem. Quote, "Before it's too late, let's do something together. If we do it now, we can make it happen." And so, how do you think this last line goes? It goes, "We do this to give thanks for our lives. We weren't born by chance, but we were actually given life. So we want to give back in gratitude. So what can we do? I won't answer this now, but if you want to find out, please come and attend one of our performances." I want to share another poem by one of the students who attended our performance. The student is a boy named Kohei, a third grader in primary school who had to move to Hiroshima in the south after the disaster. The title is "I Will Not Cry." It goes like this. On the 20th of September, my mother returned to the land of enlightened spirits. I now live with my grandparents, separated from my father and my younger brother, Kenta. Sometimes I shed a tear, but I will not cry. Grandmom sometimes cries in front of the ancestral shrine, but I will not cry. I have many friends and play soccer. My younger brother Kenta is doing his best, so I will not cry. Because my mother, who is now an enlightened spirit, would worry, I do not cry. I can hear her say in a soft voice, "Kohei, Kenta, keep doing your best." So then I will not cry. People cannot live alone. This is the Chinese character for the Buddhist concept of interdependence, spoken of as en in Japanese. Since so many people and lives are interconnected, we are able to live. Even though things are difficult and there is suffering, we can continue to live because we are never alone. Now I'd like to share more written reflections by children and teachers that came to our performances. This is from a girl in her second year of junior high school. She said, "So many times I felt like I could not live anymore, but there are animals who do not want to die, yet still have to die. I have become aware that I, as a human, should take seriously this mentality, and this has helped me to reevaluate my thinking. This has been quite moving. I will be so grateful if you can come back again for a performance next year." These are some more reflections. This is from a girl in her final year of junior high school. "I have never really had an awareness of the emotion of happiness, so this became a good opportunity to think about what happiness means to me. Every year the song and recitation performance is so moving. The way I have thought about my heart, mind, and myself up to this point has been totally shaken by the Dharma talk. While it is difficult to express in any kind of form, the First Star Theater really stays in my heart and mind. From now on in my life, I really want to place importance on the things that I have learned about in these past 3 years. Saying goodbye with happiness. Saying see you again is even greater happiness. Saying until we meet again is the greatest happiness. Something simple can be the cause of great happiness. I believe Buddhism's potential is unlimited. Thank you so much for your attention."